when I first moved to Wren Hill Drive, I thought I'd finally found peace. It was quiet, almost too quiet, the kind of stillness that makes you second-guess whether you're the only person alive for miles. The air smelled like pine and dust. Streetlights flickered like they were running on borrowed time. The house I bought wasn't much, small porch, cracked driveway, creaky floors, but it was mine. I'd been craving solitude, and this neighborhood seemed like a perfect place to disappear from the noise of city life. For the first few days, I barely saw anyone. I unpacked in silence, cooked instant noodles, listened to podcasts to fill the empty rooms. It felt peaceful until the knock came. It was around noon. 3 solid knocks, slow and deliberate. When I opened the door, a tall man stood there with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Hey there. Name's Tom Harris. Live 3 doors down. Thought I'd welcome you to the block." He was maybe mid-50s, wiry frame, salt and pepper beard, wearing a plaid shirt tucked into jeans that looked like they hadn't been washed in weeks. His politeness felt rehearsed, but I brushed that thought off. We talked briefly, the usual neighbor chit-chat. He asked where I'd moved from, what I did for work, if I lived alone. None of it seemed strange at first, just friendly curiosity. Then he mentioned his wife, Claire, and said they loved having new blood in the neighborhood. Something about the way he said new blood made me uncomfortable. I laughed it off and thanked him before closing the door. Over the next few days, I noticed something. No one else ever seemed to be outside. No kids on bikes. No cars driving past. Even in the evenings, the whole street looked abandoned, like the aftermath of a forgotten evacuation. One afternoon, Tom knocked again. He said he and Claire were hosting a small dinner party that night, just a few folks from the neighborhood. He insisted I come, said it'd be good for me to meet everyone. I hesitated, but he seemed harmless enough. I agreed. When the clock hit 7:30 p.m., I threw on a casual shirt and walked the short stretch to his house. The entire neighborhood was dim, no porch lights, no silhouettes in windows. Just darkness. Tom's front door was cracked open. I called out softly, "Tom." His voice came from somewhere deep inside. "Come on in. Make yourself at home." The living room was dimly lit. Everything smelled faintly of mildew and something metallic. "Hello." I called again. No answer. I stepped into the kitchen, empty. No food, no sound, no people. That's when it hit me. The place didn't look lived in. No dishes, no photos, no clutter, just emptiness. Then the front door slammed. The echo carried through the whole house. My pulse shot up. "Tom." No reply. I hurried toward the hallway, but every step I took felt heavier, slower. The air felt thick, like the walls were breathing. When I reached the door, it was locked, all 3 deadbolts. From behind me, his voice came again. "Leaving already?" It sounded deeper. "Mina." I turned. His shadow stretched across the hallway floor. He was standing just at the edge of the kitchen doorway, face half in shadow. "I thought we could talk," he said. He took 1 step forward, and I caught the faintest glint of metal in his hand. I didn't wait. I tore at the locks, yanked the door open, and sprinted home barefoot. I called the police, shaking so badly I could barely dial. They arrived within minutes, but Tom's house was empty. No signs of dinner. No wife named Claire. No furniture. The officer told me Tom had lived there alone for nearly 15 years. No one in the neighborhood had ever met his wife, because she didn't exist. They said he'd been odd, but harmless. I knew better. That night, I couldn't sleep. Through my window, across the dark street, I could see a faint orange glow in the upper window of Tom's house. It looked like the tip of a cigarette. And I swear, I saw the outline of a face watching my house until dawn. For weeks, I tried to forget what happened that night. The police closed the case as a misunderstanding. Tom had vanished, and they figured he must have skipped town when word spread. But I couldn't shake the feeling that he hadn't gone far. Every creak in the house, every hum from the pipes felt like footsteps in the dark. I started double-locking the doors. I nailed shut the side windows. Still, I didn't feel safe. About a month later, a letter showed up in my mailbox. No return address. No postage stamp. Just my name, printed neatly in black ink. Inside was a folded sheet of paper with a single line, "Dinner's still waiting." I called the police again, but there wasn't much they could do. They told me unless he was caught trespassing, it wasn't a crime. I could hear the doubt in their voices, like they thought I was paranoid. Maybe I was. But I knew what I saw that night. I tried to move on. Went to work, stayed busy, even made plans to sell the house. Then one night, I heard it again, the knocking. 3 times. Same rhythm. It was 2:47 a.m. I froze on the couch, staring at the front door. The porch light flickered once, then went out. The knock came again, harder this time. Then a whisper, low, gravelly. "Open up. It's just me." My whole body locked. That voice, I knew it. I grabbed my phone, backed down the hallway, and hid behind the kitchen island. The knocking stopped. Then, silence. For a few minutes, I heard nothing. No footsteps. No voice. Just the sound of my own heartbeat pounding against my ribs. Then the doorknob began to turn. Slowly. Deliberately. I hit record on my phone camera and whispered into it, "If I don't make it out, it's him. Tom Harris. From Wren Hill Drive." The knob stopped turning. Then, a faint metallic clink, like something sliding into the keyhole. He had a key. I crawled quietly toward the back door, but before I could reach it, the front door swung open. The sound was deafening. It hit the wall hard, and I could hear slow, heavy breathing fill the air. I ducked behind the couch, holding my breath. His boots scraped across the floorboards, methodical, unhurried. He was humming. A faint, tuneless hum that echoed through the house. He walked past me once, then again. Each time, the hum got a little louder. Then it stopped. I waited. 30 seconds. A minute. Nothing. And then, from behind me, "I told you dinner was ready." I turned, and he lunged. He wasn't holding a knife this time. It was something else, a length of cable, maybe? I grabbed the nearest thing I could, a lamp, and smashed it into his shoulder. He screamed, stumbled, and I bolted out the back door barefoot, sprinting across the wet grass into the night. I didn't stop running until I hit the 24-hour gas station a mile away. I called 911 again, gasping, shaking, half incoherent. When the police arrived, they found my house torn apart. Drawers pulled out. Furniture flipped. Every picture frame shattered. But the worst part? On my kitchen table, they found a place set for 2, candles lit, plates neatly arranged, food on both sides. And on my plate, written in ketchup, were the words, "Welcome home." Tom was never found. But a week later, my neighbor across the street told me something I'll never forget. The house Tom had lived in, the one where he'd invited me to dinner, it had been abandoned for over 8 years. No electricity. No running water. No record of a man named Tom Harris in any county database. To this day, I don't know who he really was, or what he wanted. But sometimes, when the night's still enough, and the wind blows just right, I swear I can still hear that humming, low and steady, floating across Wren Hill Drive. Story 2. Across the street, I used to think the phrase "love thy neighbor" was harmless advice. Then I moved into Birchwood Lane. The house was nothing special, Small lawn, peeling paint, and a leaky faucet that sang all night, but the rent was cheap and the commute to work was short. I wasn't looking for paradise, just somewhere quiet enough to think. For the first few weeks, everything was normal, until the guy across the street moved in. I noticed him unloading boxes one Friday evening. Late 30s maybe, thin build, messy blonde hair. He wore a grey hoodie and never looked up once while unpacking. Even when I waved, he didn't react, like he didn't see me. I figured he was just shy, or antisocial, whatever. But a week later, I caught him standing on the sidewalk, facing my house. Not walking, not texting, just standing. Still. At first, I assumed he was lost, maybe waiting for an Uber. But when I stepped outside to ask if everything was all right, he turned his head slightly, just enough for me to see a faint grin, then walked off. I went back inside uneasy but convinced it was nothing. That night, though, I saw him again. From my bedroom window. He was standing across the street, same spot, same stillness. No phone, no movement, just watching. I shut the blinds and told myself not to spiral. For a few days, he disappeared. I even started to think I'd imagined it. Then one morning, while heading to work, I noticed my mailbox flag was up. I hadn't mailed anything. Inside was a folded note. No envelope. No name. Just a sentence. You leave your lights on too late. My stomach dropped. I showed it to the cops, but they called it weird, not criminal. They told me to install cameras if it made me feel better. So I did, one by the front porch, one over the garage, one facing the street. For 2 nights, nothing. Then, on the third, the footage showed him again, standing in the same spot, looking at my house. He stayed there for 2 hours. Never moved. Never blinked. When I zoomed in, I saw he was holding something, a small black notebook. He flipped through it occasionally, writing something down. I couldn't sleep after that. Every creak sounded like a footstep. Every reflection looked like a face. 2 nights later, I woke to the faint sound of gravel crunching outside. I pulled up the camera feed. Nothing. Then I realized why. The lens was covered. Someone had put tape over it. I felt my chest tighten. I called 911 right away and whispered into the phone while staring out the blinds. That's when I saw him. He was in my driveway, looking directly at my front door. No flashlight. No mask. Just that same grin. I stayed frozen until I heard sirens. When the patrol car lights hit my windows, he bolted. Cops searched the area, but he vanished into the night like smoke. They found the tape pulled off my camera and faint shoe prints leading toward the woods behind the street. For a few weeks, I slept with a baseball bat next to me. Nothing happened. Until the cops called me in mid-December. They'd arrested someone. My neighbor. Apparently, he'd been caught trying to break into another house across town. When they searched his place, they found dozens of spiral notebooks, filled with names, addresses, schedules. One of those notebooks had my name written on the cover, circled in red ink. Inside, underlined 3 times, were the words, "Knows I'm watching. We'll check door soon." That single line still gives me chills. Because the night before his arrest, I'd heard a noise, a light rattle at the front door. I'd thought it was the wind. Now I know it wasn't. Sometimes, when I look out my window and see the empty house across the street, I can't help but imagine him there again. Just standing still, under that yellow streetlight. Grinning. After the arrest, I thought it was over. The cops told me he'd be behind bars for a long time, stalking, breaking, and entering, multiple restraining orders from other towns. They said I could finally relax. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that peace doesn't start when someone says it does. A few days after his arrest, I started noticing small things that didn't add up. My front door mat moved. My garage light left on. My back gate open when I knew I'd locked it. At first, I chalked it up to paranoia. I even started seeing a therapist who specialized in trauma recovery. She said my mind was rebuilding trust with reality. I wanted to believe that. But then, one morning, something happened that snapped all logic in half. I woke up to a knock, 3 soft taps on the door. The same rhythm I'd heard the night he was outside my house. I froze in bed. Waited. No second knock. No sound of retreating footsteps. I eventually got up and checked the peephole. Nothing. But when I opened the door, there it was, lying on the mat. A small black notebook. It looked identical to the one I saw on the camera footage months before. The first page had a date, written in my handwriting. A date from 2 days ago. Then a sentence, "I never left." My whole body went cold. I dropped the notebook, slammed the door shut, and called the detective who handled the case. He swore the guy was still in custody. Even offered to send proof. I believed him, or at least I tried to. That night, I couldn't sleep. I left every light on, every curtain open. But somewhere around 2 a.m., the power went out. Total blackness. My chest felt like it was caving in. I grabbed my phone flashlight and crept toward the window. Across the street, the empty house was glowing. Faintly. One light on upstairs. Moving shadows. I called 911 again, whispering to the operator, "He's back. He's inside that house." They sent units right away. While I waited, I kept the camera on the glowing window, recording every flicker of movement. When the police arrived, I watched their flashlights sweep through the house. They were in there for maybe 10 minutes before one of the officers walked over to me, shaking his head. "No one's inside," he said, "but you might want to see this." He handed me something in a plastic evidence bag. Another notebook. Found upstairs. On the windowsill. The cover had my name on it again. This time, under it, a fresh line was written in red pen. "You saw me watching." The ink was still wet. That's when I realized the power outage wasn't random. He'd cut the electricity. From outside. Meaning, at some point that night, while I was inside panicking, he was right there. Standing in the dark. Watching. Weeks passed. I moved out soon after, left most of my things behind. Didn't even bother to sell the place. I just wanted out. A few months later, my therapist called to check in. She asked if I'd made progress letting go. I told her I was fine. That the past was behind me. But sometimes, when I walk down a quiet street at night and see a dark window, I swear I can feel his eyes on me again. And sometimes, I still find small, black notebooks left on my doorstep. No writing inside anymore. Just a single, pressed fingerprint. Always the same one. Always his. Story 3. The woman upstairs when I moved into the old apartment on Ashgrove Street. I thought I'd finally caught a break. It was cheap, close to work, and came fully furnished. The kind of deal that sounds too good to be true. Spoiler, it was. The building was small, 3 floors, 6 units. I was on the top. Across the narrow hall lived a woman named Marianne. She was in her 40s maybe, with stringy black hair and an expression that never changed. She didn't smile. She didn't blink much either. Just stared. The landlord said she'd lived there for years and mostly kept to herself. That was fine by me. For the first few days, we barely crossed paths. Until one night, I came home from a late shift to find her standing right outside my door. She didn't knock. She didn't say anything. Just stood there. Can I help you?" I asked, half whispering, trying not to sound annoyed. She tilted her head slightly. "Do you usually come home this late?" Her voice was soft but completely flat, like reading from a teleprompter. I laughed awkwardly, said something about long hours at work, and she just turned around and went back into her apartment without another word. Weird, but harmless. Or so I thought. The next morning, at 6 a.m., loud knocking jolted me awake. It was her again. When I opened the door, she was there in the same robe, same dead stare. "Would you like to come over tonight?" she asked. "I made soup." I said I was busy. She nodded once and left. That became a routine. Every morning, 6 a.m. sharp, she'd knock, same tone, same question. Every night, I'd get home and see her door cracked open like she was waiting. After a week, I stopped answering. Then the noises started. Late at night, I'd hear shuffling outside my apartment. Soft knocks, not on the door, but along the wall behind my bed. Once, I even heard whispering, my name, said slowly, over and over again. I called the landlord. He said Marianne had episodes sometimes and that she was mostly harmless. Mostly. That word stuck in my head. A few nights later, I came home late again. The hallway lights were flickering, that ugly orange fluorescent strobe. And her door was open. Not cracked. Wide open. I hesitated but tried to ignore it. When I reached my door, I noticed something off. My lock felt loose. Like someone had been messing with it. I went inside and froze. My things had been moved. Not stolen, moved. The TV remote on the counter. The toothbrush facing the wrong way. A chair slightly turned. And sitting neatly on my bed, a steaming bowl of soup. The same kind she'd mentioned. That's when I heard the floorboard creak behind me. I spun around. She was standing in my kitchen doorway, still in that same robe, holding something shiny in her hand, a kitchen knife. "Marian," I said slowly, trying to stay calm. "You can put that down, okay?" She smiled, the first time I'd ever seen her do it. "You finally came over," she whispered. She stepped closer. I backed toward the door. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely grip the handle. When she lunged, I slammed the door between us, locking it fast. She pounded once, twice, then silence. I called the cops, barely able to get the words out. When they arrived, she was gone. Her apartment, empty. No furniture, no clothes, no personal belongings. Just bare walls and dust. The officers said she must have moved out suddenly. But that didn't make sense. Her lease was still active, and the landlord hadn't heard from her. I moved out 2 weeks later. But that wasn't the end. Months later, I got a voicemail from a detective. They'd found Marianne in a hospital 2 towns over. She'd been living under a different name for years, drifting between buildings. Every time, the same pattern. She'd fixate on a neighbor. Then it'd escalate. When they searched her old unit after she was committed, they found a journal tucked under floorboard. My name was on the first page. Under it, a single line written in neat handwriting. "He looks comfortable here. He won't be for long." I deleted the voicemail the same day. I never called back. But sometimes, when I wake up in the middle of the night, I swear I can hear that faint knocking again, 3 times. Always at 6 a.m. Always behind the wall.